folks. Welcome to the Chicago Burlington and Quincy Railroad and the Chicago and Northwestern Railway in Wyoming. Today is August 3rd, 2025, and this is Layout Update number 69. I'm Mark Pruitt, Accounts Payable Clerk. This report is for a somewhat short month as I'm recording this on July 28th. From the 31st to the 3rd, I'll be at a train show in North Platte along with the Casper Club, so I'm putting this together a few days early so I don't miss the usual 3rd of the month posting date. Because of all the stuff going on this month, there won't be a Cronkite segment in this update. It will be back next month though. This video is also a bit shorter than usual for the same reasons. I reached a minor milestone this month. All bench work is now complete for the entire railroad. I put the finishing touches on the Cody branch benchwork, which was the last benchwork to be built. I worked on the Casper Ice House this month, completed the GN Pacific conversion to DCC, held an operating session, no photos as usual, and worked on installing Cody branch sub-road bed on that new benchwork. Finally, I joined several other guys for an operating session on Dave's layout in Basin just before my session here in Casper. We'll start this month's review with the GN Pacific. If you remember, I was having a bit of trouble with the Pacific when I first test ran it in late June. As it was backing around the curve between Casper and Powder River, it was shorting across the rails somehow. In early July, I laid it out on the workbench to troubleshoot it. I removed the pilot truck and superstructure, then carefully reassembled them. The problem, whatever was causing it, went away. I'm not sure what the problem had been, but when I ran the loco again, it was just fine. A couple weeks later, in preparation for the upcoming operating session, I ran the loco up the helix with a couple of passenger cars tied behind, just to make sure it would handle the grade without stalling. It did just fine. It can probably handle at least one more car, but for the operating session, this would be sufficient. I'll test it with more cars sometime in the next few weeks, just so I know how much it can pull before it begins slipping. On to the ice house. Back in May, I cut the 600 grit sandpaper I used for tar paper roofing, then I painted it. Since then, it's been sitting in the garage waiting to be applied to the structure. On June 12th, I finally got around to doing that. In this shot, I've cut and applied all the tar paper strips and begun adding the tar, glossy black paint, that seals the edges of all the strips. Then I hit the roof with dull coat, which effectively hid the tar at the edges of the paper. Oh well. Following that, I weathered the roof with chocks and set the building temporarily in place at the end of the icing platform. The building itself still needs to have details added, a platform added by the track for ice delivery, and door hinges and such painted. Then it will need to be embedded in the ground rather than just perched on top of it. I'll probably do all that the same time as I finish and light the platform itself. In other words, probably a long time from now. Right after last month's update, I got to work on the last bits of Cody branch benchwork by building the last box section that goes under the turnback curve of the peninsula. Here's that section installed on July 5th. On July 6th, I installed an orphan stringer across the legs at the end of the benchwork. This would support the end of the turnback curve to Cody. I knew I'd need a couple of joists between this piece and the rest of the Cody benchwork for track support, but that would have to wait until I knew exactly where the curve would be located. We'll fast forward now to July 24th. Right after the operating session, I got back to work on the Cody branch, putting together the turnback curve with the remainder of the sub-road bed for the Vocation/Ralston siding. It's a good thing I'm about done with this kind of work. As you can see here, I'm out of places to make sub-assemblies. I had to do this on top of the end of the Whirlwind Peninsula. I managed to set that rather unwieldy sub-roadbed assembly in place on the Cody benchwork. Here, still July 24th, I was adjusting the final position of the curve and vocation siding. The next day I had the sub-roadbed in its final location and fixed permanently to the rest of the vocation siding. It was time to install those two joists I mentioned earlier. In this shot, the one on the right is in place, and I'm just installing the cleat for the one on the left. I had to crawl inside the benchwork to attach the inside ends of the joist to the rest of the benchwork. And here they are, the last two pieces of benchwork for the railroad. Benchwork construction for the CB&Q in Wyoming is now officially complete. The next day, I finished setting the grade and fastening risers through to the end of the turnback curve. So where was that stub end of the turnback curve going to lead to anyway? Why, into Cody, of course. It was time to finalize the Cody track arrangement. For all that Cody was a small town with a population of only about 3,000 people in the mid-1940s, and was merely the terminus of a rail branch, it was a bit of a hotbed of railroad activity. The Husky refinery, whose main product was asphalt, shipped a lot of mostly loaded tank cars out of Cody. Cody was also the Burlington's gateway to Yellowstone National Park. A very nice hotel, the Burlington Inn, was located near the end of track. There was quite a bit of passenger traffic coming down the line into and out of Cody. While we're looking, you can see the passenger station in this photo, and right next to it are the very modest engine facilities. There was no turntable in Cody. Locomotives were turned on a Y out of frame to the right. A wool warehouse is at the far left, and just across from the depot is the freight house. To the right of that was a farmer's co-op. As with so many towns in Wyoming, there were also stock pens. Until the bottom fell out of the wool market at the end of World War II, mostly sheep were shipped from many of these towns. I spent some time over the last few days finalizing, at least for now, the track plan for Cody. It spans the entire Wind River side of the peninsula on the level below the canyon. As we leave the turnaround curve heading into Cody, we come to the Husky refinery. The track arrangement here is a faithful, though somewhat compressed, representation of the tracks in the refinery as of the late 1940s. Past the refinery is a very small marshalling yard with the stock pens and the farmer's co-op along one track. Then we get down to the end of the line with the passenger depot, engine facilities, and Y, along with a couple of industries. A few things in this plan have been relocated from the actual town, but I think I've captured the basics. This should keep the folks running the Cody Local busy for a while during operating sessions. The only downside is that I'll probably have to lose that 14-inch bump out on the canyon above to make it easier to operate at Cody. I hate to lose that bump out. It would have shown a bit of the East Canyon wall with the highway tunnels, but sometimes difficult choices have to be made. Thanks go out to Dave and Kevin for their input into the planning for Cody. Going back to early in July, I started making provisions for the Poposia River, or as my mother always called it, the Popo-Aggie River, and the bridge between Hudson and Lander on the C&W. First, I added stringers to bridge between the two sections of benchwork. Then I added a plywood sheet that will act as the base for the riverbed. On July 8th, I took a trip over to Riverton to look at the abutments and shoes for what is now known as Black Bridge, one of the few remaining bridges on the old C&W line between Shoshone and Lander. It's now part of a hiking trail. Because part of the river crossing will also be a timber trestle in addition to the truss bridge, I went to Glen Rock late in the month to look at the C&W bridge there. I'll combine details of the two for the final Popo Aggie crossing. On July 22nd, I had an operating session on the layout. As usual, I didn't get any photos, but I did get a few of some of the things I did in preparation for the session. This one shows my track cleaning train. The reefer is a John Allen style track cleaning car. A masonite pad floats under the car on the railheads, held in place under the car by two nails that stick up loosely through holes in the car floor. It took quite a bit of time for this train to cover all the track on the layout. I attached scrap styrene left over from my backdrops on the edge of the Lander benchwork to simulate the Lander fascia for the Grable operator. It's pretty effective in blocking the glare from the Grable lights. The 2 days before my session were spent at Dave's house in Basin. A few of us spent a couple days there running trains on his fantastic layout. After giving Dave a hard time a few weeks ago, he lettered this 70-tonner especially for me. Thanks, Dave. That was a very thoughtful gesture, but in the end, it's still just a diesel. Here's a clip showing Kevin doing some switching in the main yard. I had to mute the audio as this is a family-friendly channel and the banter got a bit adult at times. I also had to edit the video rather aggressively to make sure the adult gestures were removed. But we had a great time at Dave's. Then we all came to my house the next day to make up for it. And that's it. In August, a lot of time will be spent working on improving my operating sessions. To this point, the sessions have been pretty unstructured, which at times has led to some pretty chaotic situations. Dave, Kevin, and Steve will be here on August 19th to try out a few different approaches and help avoid the chaos in the future. I'm going to be spending a lot of time this month working on custom car loads within JMRI to improve traffic flow as well. I will do some work on the layout also, but the bulk of my modeling time will be spent at the computer and running trains on the layout to test car movements. There might not be a lot of building going on this month. I guess you'll just have to check out next month's update video to see what I do get done. Thanks for watching, everyone. Stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll see you next month.